He was just a tired office worker grinding dungeons for a black guild, dreaming of a day off. Then one wrong button turned his private dungeon run into a nationwide livestream. While he casually farms monsters like it's his daily routine, the internet completely loses its mind. Clips spread faster than anyone could control. Overnight, a nobody becomes a name everyone knows. So if he's going to grind anyway, he might as well do it on his own terms. Let's go. The story begins with Makoto Tanaka, an employee of the Black Dog Guild, sitting in the office and saying that there were 5 A-ranked trolls and 4 basilisks, as well as 3 S-ranked tyrant dragons. All of these are dangerous monsters, and it looks like he won't make the last train again today. He looked tiredly at his wristwatch and said that he'll go to the dungeon right now. Even if he hurries, it will already be past midnight. When was the last time he was even home? He leaned back in his chair and thought how he wanted to sleep. 10 years ago, mysterious structures appeared, which people called dungeons. Unknown creatures poured out of them. There was also a bunch of weapons and equipment created from materials unknown to humans. The people who began to explore this were called seekers. He also went there in search of treasure. Naturally, he knew that in such a job, it was easy to lose your life. However, with the advent of dungeons, people with special abilities also began to appear. They were tens, even hundreds of times stronger than ordinary people. Whether he was lucky or unlucky, he also developed abilities. He took the train to Shibuya Station and heard people say with surprise that such monsters were there too. It all looked so interesting. He would also like to go into a dungeon at least once. It was dangerous, so he shouldn't go there. Besides, he was not awakened and would die quickly. The protagonist thought that if he thought about it, he too had come close to death more than once in dungeons. They even created a special website, DTube, for people to share their exploits. In a short period of time, they became very popular. Naturally, he never filmed anything there, since he practically lived at work. He swiped his card to pass through the turnstile and thought that at times like these, he began to feel too old. He went to the Shibuya Dungeon information board and handed over his card again. The girl returned it to him, wished him luck in the battle, and said that passage was allowed. He came to a dungeon called the Stone Demon, and looking tired, said that he had to work again. He took a small device out of his inside jacket pocket, activated it, and it took off next to him. He looked at it and thought it was a small drone for filming. It was designed to automatically record video and send it to the guild. It also has a protocol for transmitting images to the network. He only uses this to transmit information about the guild's work. He looked at the phone and said that they needed to select the guild video transmission protocol. He felt sick due to lack of sleep. He started to fall and hit his head on the railing. The guard was very worried about this and loudly asked if he was okay. MC agreed and said that he didn't have to worry. He looked at him. His nose was bleeding and said that he was just a little dizzy. The guard was still worried and thought he looked like a walking corpse. He said nothing, walked down the stairs to the dungeon, and thought that if he thought about it, he'd only slept a couple of hours today, and he hadn't been home for about 2 weeks. When was the last time he'd slept properly? I wonder why he even does this. The guild he works for is a government contractor. That's where the guild's advantages end. Even the government itself doesn't want to work on these dungeons. No one controls it, so their guild is full of hard work. At this rate, he'll soon die of overwork. Although he understands this, he's so overloaded that he doesn't even have time to think about quitting. Today, he's heading into the dungeon again with his usual lifeless face. He looked at his phone screen again, pressed a button, and said that everything was already swimming before his eyes, so he needed to finish everything here as soon as possible. He thought that his goal today was the largest dungeon in Tokyo, the Shibuya Dungeon. This was where he would spend his next day. He straightened his tie and said that he was getting to work. He entered the dungeon and thought that he didn't know then that because of today's trip to the dungeons, his life would change dramatically. Viewers started coming to his stream and writing, "Who is this?" He has Guild Report in the title. Maybe that's a settings error? He doesn't think he even knows he started a stream. He's not even paying attention to the comments. Is this the Shibuya Dungeon? It's the hardest one. Does he even realize that? If his group doesn't have at least 3 people, and there definitely aren't any, then he'll definitely die. What 3 people is he even talking about? Reinforcements won't even come to him. It seems like there should never have been any streams on this channel. The channel is popular and belongs to the guild, and this man, is he their employee? He just looked. He is listed as their employee on the guild website. He looked down, noticed that he was dirty, and said that it was not that important. He needed to hurry. Viewers wrote that he looked at their standards on the website and was shocked. They saw how many monsters he had to kill and wrote that he did not mind, but it seems that this guild is too dark. They should look at his standards themselves. He will talk about this stream on his social media. By the way, he seems to have seen him somewhere before. Can anyone tell me? Was he shown on the news? Makoto quickly descended into the dungeon and thought that dungeons are divided into upper, middle, and lower levels. The part he needed was the very bottom of the entire dungeon. He stopped before the abyss and thought that under normal circumstances he would descend slowly and carefully. but now he had no time. He would have to plunge headlong into the abyss. He walked to the very edge and said that he had to work again. How he wanted to quit all this and go home. He also wanted to eat a hot, home-cooked meal. He looked at the device next to him and thought that this would be filmed. The guild president wouldn't be watching anyway, so no one would notice him. He said with a dissatisfied expression that they weren't raising his salary anyway. He hated his dangerous job. He hoped that he would be able to sleep at least 2 hours today. Viewers were watching him and wrote that if this was the only way for him to fall asleep, it would be better not to work there. This is a worker in the guild. What are the authorities even looking at? They are breaking labor laws. They can do whatever they want, but he is making a copy of this stream. This will definitely become popular. This video can definitely stir up the higher-ups. He noticed that the number of viewers was growing. It started with only 2 people, and now there are about 10,000. The protagonist noticed that his phone started vibrating and asked what happened to his phone. He thought that there were only guild contacts and a couple of friends. There are no social networks, and friends rarely write, so it must be from the company. He said with a tired look that all he gets from them are insults and threats, so he will ignore them. Tomorrow, everyone will mock him again anyway. He does not even have time to object to them. He is tired. He was about to jump down and said that it is time for him to go deeper. He thought that in the center of the Shibuya dungeon, there is a deep pit. If you jump into it, you can immediately fall to the deep level. He started falling down and thought that it is too dangerous, so few adventurers would dare to take such a step. If only they had not sent him this damn norm. Viewers were shocked by this and wrote, "He's going to die. What is he even doing?" He noticed that notifications started coming to his phone and asked why he was getting so many notifications. However, he doesn't think it's anything important. He just needs to ignore it. He looked at the device and thought that he forgot about the drone, but it still keeps up with him. He's not used to being filmed yet. It's not that necessary anyway. He doubts the company will even look at the report. However, he wonders how long today's task will take. Otherwise, he's too worried. Will he also try streaming someday? I wonder if he'll get any feedback from this. Viewers looked at him and wrote that he didn't even break a sweat. How long has he been falling? He's grateful to whoever invited him here. This video is a godsend. However, he just takes and looks at the camera while falling many kilometers down. The MC looked down, saw the bottom, and said it was time to land. Suddenly, a huge dragon flew towards him, letting out a very loud roar. The viewers were very surprised when they saw it, and he wrote, "What was it? It's a wyvern, a very dangerous monster for beginners, even for experienced adventurers. If such a monster had bitten him, he would have definitely died." He hadn't seen monsters eating people in a long time. He looked at it with a calm expression and said it was a red wyvern. If he remembered correctly, it was a monster from the lower level. Most likely, it decided that he was food and flew in. This monster flew towards him, opened its mouth wide and screamed loudly. He, with a calm expression on his face, grabbed his sword and delivered an incredibly fast strike, which cut the wyvern in half. After that, he bounced off the wall and landed with a loud sound, and the body of this monster fell next to him. He adjusted his suit and, with a calm expression on his face, said that it was time to work. The viewers were shocked by what happened and wrote, "What the hell just happened? He just cut the red wyvern in half. They should even look at him. He fell from such a height and all he does is stretch his legs. Did they even see him swing the sword? Is he imagining it? Or did he not even draw it? Maybe his camera has a low frame rate and they just didn't notice? What the hell is this? He's never heard of such a thing?" By the way, there are already 50,000 people on the stream, because this video has spread across all social media. He's like some kind of great streamer. Notifications started coming into Makoto's phone again, and he asked why it was blowing up with notifications. How much longer would it go on? He heard a loud roar, saw a group of monsters, and said that he had found them. He thought that this was the deepest part of the dungeon, a dangerous place where only the strongest monsters lived. He looked at the monsters and said that there were trolls and minotaurs here, basilisks and death knights. These are dangerous monsters. And also the tyrant dragon. This is a very strong opponent, and he didn't want to fight him. However, his superiors gave him a quota, which means he will have to fight. He drew his sword from its sheath and said that it was time to get to work. He ran towards the crowd of trolls. They ran towards him and screamed loudly. He looked at this and thought that the troll, although scary in appearance, was physically well-toned. The first time he met him, he almost died of fear. He ran past these monsters with incredible speed and attacked their heads. He thought that this was a very durable opponent. If you cut off its head, it would not be able to move and it had no special abilities. He would even say that of all the monsters in the dungeon depths, this one is the weakest. The viewers were very surprised by this and wrote, "He killed 3 trolls with 1 blow? Isn't a troll an A-rank monster? This is a video edit, isn't it?" He just can't believe it. Are these monsters really that easy to defeat? Or is this clerk really that strong? Even an A-rank adventurer can handle them with his equipment. No matter how strong the monsters and adventurers are, weapons still decide. Why did the Black Dog Guild hide such a talented adventurer from the world? His phone started vibrating again, and he asked loudly in a dissatisfied voice, why is his phone blowing up with notifications today? This is distracting him from work. A basilisk approached him, and they both looked at each other. The viewers were surprised by this, and wrote that it was the first time he had seen a basilisk. Ogres should also inhabit the lower levels. In general, these monsters are a rarity in the market. Few can fight them. He looks terrifying. He definitely couldn't become a seeker. Even if he did, he wouldn't go all the way to the bottom. They should watch. If he doesn't dodge the basilisk's attack now, he'll turn to stone. There are already over 5 million viewers here. He hasn't watched such an intense and interesting stream in a long time. The protagonist calmly looked at this monster and thought that its breath turns all living things to stone. If he gets caught, he will die. He wishes he had comrades who could cure this status, or at least healing items, but he's a loner, and he's not very good at making friends. Therefore, he needs to kill it when it attacks, which is right now. As soon as he picked the right moment, he quickly ran up to the monster and struck it with his sword. The attack made a loud sound. The monster died and fell to the ground. He said thoughtfully that few people know this, but its most vital part is located under its belly. However, if you hit it wrong, its petrification will spread throughout the area. Surprised viewers wrote, so this isn't his first time fighting this monster? He said that few people know about this, although no one knows about it at all. How many basilisks has he killed in his life? Because he can't see its movements, he feels strange. Surprisingly, is he even human? Is this the first time he's seen monsters killed so quickly? He'll write about it in the news with the headline, "Samurai have appeared in Japan again," and he'll also post it on foreign websites. Surprisingly, there are also people from other countries here. It's not surprising. The stream already has over 10 million viewers. He kept hearing notifications and asked, with a displeased expression, "What's wrong with the phone today?" Ever since he came here, his phone hasn't stopped vibrating. If he looks at it, he'll see nothing but curses directed at him, so he needs to continue ignoring it. Suddenly, he heard a loud roar from a monster, looked to the side, and said that it was an S-rank monster, a tyrant dragon. He thought that this monster's stats were several dozen times higher than those of a troll. It could melt metals with its flames, making it a very powerful opponent. The viewers watched this and wrote, "Is this really the end of the story and the stream is about to end?" He hopes that he doesn't die. It's a tyrant dragon. His S-rank group can't always win, and here's an ordinary clerk, and he's doing it alone. Sad news. The mysterious swordsman has died. He must run from this monster with all his might. Are there really more than 50 million of them already? That's a third of the country. The MC calmly looked at this monster and thought that its breath would not leave a speck of dust on him. He sheathed his sword and thought that it was unlikely that he would even be able to dodge. But he did not need such a situation, because he still wanted to live. The viewers were very worried about this and wrote that he was so concentrated. Was he really going to fight? He was betting his mother's soul that he would kill him too. The dragon began to release a huge stream of flame from its mouth, but he calmly stood in the same place. He swung his sword incredibly fast, releasing an incredibly destructive wave that cut the flames. He was also able to cut the dragon in two with this attack. The viewers were shocked by this and wrote, "Is a sword even capable of such a thing at this time?" He is more frightened by the fact that he cut the dragon in half with one blow. Is this really a simple office worker? Did a sword master really appear in their time? However, when did their clerks become so powerful? A workaholic swordsman. How did they come up with such a nickname for him? He likes it. They should write that about him everywhere. Makoto calmly looked away, and this really scared the monsters that were nearby. He thought that this dragon was their leader. After its death, the other monsters lost the will to fight. Even if he killed them, the guild would still take the materials. He had already fulfilled his quota, so there was no point in fighting further. He sheathed his sword and thought that, besides, he didn't want to either. He said that they should leave while he was kind. The monsters listened to him, ran away, and he looked at the dragon's body and said that today he finished earlier than expected. He needed to hurry. Maybe he could even stop by the grocery store and buy something. He looked at his phone and said that although he should probably check his phone first, he saw a lot of unread notifications, couldn't believe it, and turned off his phone. He turned his phone back on, but the notifications didn't disappear, and with a shocked expression, he asked how many notifications there were in total. He was wondering why his phone was blowing up. He had 9,999 notifications that had already appeared. Where did this even come from? He unlocked his phone and saw a lot of DTube notifications that a new comment had appeared on his recording. He saw this and asked why he was getting notifications from there. He was very surprised when he saw his broadcast and loudly asked why his video was uploaded there. So all those comments were because of this? He wondered how this had happened and what was going on. He remembered what happened earlier and with a worried look said loudly that he had set up the broadcast for the company. He saw his settings and with a very worried look, thought that he had missed the settings. So all his actions were broadcast to the whole country? However, he's not that popular, right? That means not many people saw the stream, right? He looked at the viewer count became even more worried and asked, 100 million people? He fell to his knees and thought he was using a company account after all, and there were no more than 2,000 people there. So where did that 100 million people come from? He's finished now, because even famous streamers and TV hosts don't have close to 1 million. But here, it's a full 100 million. He looked at his device with a worried expression, and viewers wrote that he finally noticed his stream. He had already been nicknamed a workaholic swordmaster on social media. He was cool. Would he like to join their guild? He congratulated him on his first stream. How did he become so strong? He was at his best and should at least say his name. He thought that no matter what he did now, it wouldn't fix the situation. Now he would have to write a bunch of written apologies. The next day after the broadcast, the protagonist returned to the company building, sat on the couch, and covered himself with a blanket. He looked at his phone in horror and said that everyone was talking about him. He decided to look at other media and saw his stream again, and a lot of comments. He threw the phone on the couch, covered his face with his hands, and wondered what to call his state. He doesn't understand anything since he spends so much time at work. He needs the opinions of strong people on the internet. He raised his head and said that it was true that he was probably the only one crazy enough to dive into the deep levels alone. Is that really worth mentioning? He thought it was true that lately he had only been descending alone. He didn't know much about the levels of other adventurers. He started descending right after the dungeons appeared in the world. He seemed to be quite strong. He never thought it would result in this. He looked at his appearance and asked, come to think of it, was it because of his nondescript appearance of an ordinary employee? He was wearing a suit, looked like an ordinary employee, and the bags under his eyes didn't give him away as an adventurer at all. That's it. He just didn't look like an adventurer at all, more like a clerk. That's why people made a news story out of it. He got a call on his phone. He was really scared because of it, jumped up and grabbed the ceiling. He looked at it with a frightened look and thought that he had disconnected from DTube. Notifications shouldn't be coming in. He went downstairs, picked up the phone and asked, what's going on now? He saw that it was an incoming call from Adachi and thought it was one of his few friends. They used to play together a lot. They hadn't seen each other at all lately. He was too busy, to be honest. He even forgot about his existence. The fact that he was calling now is undoubtedly connected with yesterday's events. Honestly, he doesn't want to talk about it, but the fact remains that there is no one to consult with except him. He answered the call. His friend said hello with a happy expression and said that he saw everything and almost died laughing. How is he feeling now? MC immediately put the phone on the table and said that he was disconnecting. He started to warm up and said that he talked him into it. He needed 1 minute. Adachi called him again. He took a deep breath, answered the call and asked what he was doing. He apologized and said that he wouldn't make any more jokes. He just asked him not to disconnect. He noticed that he smirked and asked if he wanted him to disconnect. He apologized loudly and said that he honestly wouldn't bully him anymore, so don't cut him off. He was surprised by this and said that he was so unbearable. He thought that he wasn't changing at all, although he was glad that he was doing well. Honestly, he needed his advice now, so disconnecting wasn't in his best interests. He was the best conversationalist and had known many people for a long time. Besides, he definitely understands social media. He had to figure out how to deal with this. Adachi said that he watched the video and that he was as strong as ever. Or had he gotten even stronger? Mukoto asked him to stop flattering and asked what he should do. He didn't understand him and said that first he had to say what he wanted so that he would understand. He thought about it and said that first of all, he wanted to delete all the common videos. He laughed about it and said that it was unrealistic. The number of his videos from this stream is not hundreds, but thousands. Moreover, it has already spread abroad. In Japan, there is a real samurai or something like that. He checked. It has already been translated into 5 languages. So he will have to accept it. He was very worried about this and said that this is not the outcome he wanted. He thought that, by the way, during the broadcast, there were comments, apparently from foreign users. He loudly said, okay, the video deletion is cancelled. Can he suggest how to minimize the situation? He was a little surprised by this and asked, what is he saying? He just became famous, so why is he trying to give it up? This chance will not come again. He was indignant about this and loudly asked, what is he saying? He is just an ordinary office worker, not a blogger or a streamer. Even if he becomes famous, it will not bring him anything good. Only his boss will make more sarcastic remarks to him. He grabbed his stomach and thought that his stomach, which had no problem withstanding acid slugs, was vulnerable to stress. He looked out the window and said that it seemed like the slave mentality of an office plankton was firmly ingrained in him. He understands, right? He should probably quit this guild. He was surprised by this and asked what he said. Adachi said that he saw in the video that he had very severe bags under his eyes. This Suda guy was probably still using him as a forced laborer, right? The protagonist didn't deny it and thought that it was the president of the guild he works for. They were all in the same class, and they often played together in elementary and middle school. They are so-called childhood friends. He said that, however, he was indebted to the president and couldn't suddenly quit. He looked up and asked, was it because he lent him money when his parents were sick? He had already paid the money back and worked off his debt. It was time for him to live for himself. He thought about it and asked, he said, to live for himself. He looked at his hand and thought that he was so busy that he didn't even think about such things. So he can live for himself? Adachi looked out the window and said that Suda probably told him that if he quit there, he would not find a job anywhere else. He confirmed this, and he laughed and said that he had already become a seasoned evil boss. He shouldn't take such words to heart. There are many guilds that would like to get him. Besides, there is the option of becoming a freelancer and not belonging to any company. He said that, however, he knows that you can't earn much as a freelancer. He doesn't have a license to exchange currency. He thought that what you get in the dungeon can't be directly exchanged for yen. First, you need to exchange it for a special currency G. Then it is exchanged for yen, but for this you need a license. Usually companies own this, not individuals. It's a complex system, but without it, the economy would easily collapse. Items obtained from dungeons are so valuable and expensive. Not only Japan, but most other countries use similar systems. Adachi said he wasn't asking him to become a freelancer. He could become a dungeon streamer. He thought a dungeon streamer was someone who, as the name suggests, broadcasts their dungeon runs. Indeed, it's possible to make money this way even without a currency exchange license. Famous streamers seem to make a good living, but will he be able to handle it? He said he wasn't asking him to try his best. He just wanted to support him with all his might if he decided to do so. MC was surprised by this and thought that since he works for a company that supports adventurers, he should be well versed in dungeon streaming. He's certainly a funny guy, but he's been a reliable guy since childhood. If you ask him, he'll definitely help. He said it was encouraging. He would count on him. However, could he quit his job? Somehow he couldn't imagine it. He thought that whenever he started thinking about it, he was overcome with doubts. The word unemployed was too heavy for a man his age. Adachi said that he didn't want to say such a thing, but he admired him. It surprised him a lot, and he said with a smile that he, too, once dreamed of becoming an adventurer. He thought he would fight in dungeons, but seeing how he fought, he thought that since there was a cool guy like him, he didn't need to go into dungeons. So he got a job supporting adventurers so that he could someday support one specific person. Makoto asked who that was. Did he know that person? He sighed and said that he had been stupid since childhood. In short, if he was having a hard time at his current job, he should quit it immediately. Maybe they should hire him to deliver tea to their company? He said with a small smile that if this offer seemed tempting to him, then everything was bad with him. He agreed and said that this was a really difficult case. After all, he could defeat even the tyrant's dragon, so he couldn't lose to someone like Suda. He thanked him and said that he would contact him again. He went to his workplace and looked at his watch. 3 of his colleagues entered the room, called him angrily, and one of them asked, "Is he ready? Does he even realize what he's done?" He grabbed his stomach and thought that just the sound of his voice was giving him a stomach ache. It seemed his spirit had weakened more than he thought. However, thanks to his conversation with Adachi, he was somehow able to put the situation into perspective. He stood up from his chair and thought that if it weren't for that, he probably would have already given up. Suda loudly said that because of his broadcast, the company's reputation had sunk through the floorboards. How was he going to answer for this? The rest of the employees would arrive soon, and then they would deal with him. He ran his finger across his throat and said in a very angry voice that he should be ready. The protagonist calmly looked at him and thought that everything was as usual. His management skills weren't worth a damn. However, sadly, his talent for managing a black company was simply insane. Because of this, his body and soul were completely depressed. He turned to the employee and said loudly that he had to tell the others that if they didn't come on time, he would cut their salaries. He thought that he owed him something, of course, but he wanted to live for himself. For that, he needed to fight. Suda started waving his hand and said that coming later than the boss was something the world would never forgive. He was telling them for their own good, so they should remember this well. They still had a lot to learn. MC looked at him and thought that he was saying that he was always thinking about their well-being, but that was a lie. He definitely just enjoyed lecturing. He definitely enjoyed mocking those who couldn't fight back. It was good that he was able to wake up, but before him, his stomach started hurting again. Would he be able to retort properly? He received a notification about a message from Adachi, and he wondered what he needed at such a moment. He opened the chat and saw what he had written. He was still afraid of the boss, right? In that case, he should just think he could defeat him in the blink of an eye. Then it wouldn't be scary, right? He read this, turned around, and apologized. Suda called out to him with a wide smile and asked, "He doesn't think they'll forgive him because he's feeling unwell, does he?" He denied it and thought that he used to be an adventurer and stronger than an ordinary person. However, he hadn't descended into the dungeon in a long time. He was much stronger than him. If you looked closely, his movements were full of gaps. He imagined killing him with one blow and thought that it wouldn't even take a second to kill him. Before, he was afraid that they would force him to quit the company. But now he looks and realizes that the tyrant dragon would be scarier. What was he afraid of before? He wasn't afraid of anything now. Even quitting, he could handle it. A crowd of people entered the room, loudly apologized, and said they were late. Suda turned to them and loudly asked, "Have they even seen the time?" He turned away from them with a wide smile and said that he would cut the salaries of those who were late later. He called him and asked if he was ready. He should tell what he did in a way that the other employees understood. Makoto looked at them calmly and thought that this was his usual manner. First, he makes the employee explain himself in order to instill a sense of guilt in him. Then he interrupts him, makes him remain silent, and takes over the leadership of the conversation. When it comes to this, the employee already gives up and cannot say anything. He is a truly shameless guy. If this were earlier, he would also make the same face as everyone else. He said that he mistakenly set up the broadcast incorrectly and allowed work information to leak outside. It was his fault, and he regretted it. He noticed his wide smile and thought that in his head he was probably already seeing a way to break his spirit. Suda approached him, agreed, and said that what he did was terribly bad. I wonder how he is going to compensate for this. The protagonist thought that things could have gone exactly like this before, but today, he said that he refuses to compensate for it. Now this guild has a bad reputation on the internet, but it is entirely his responsibility. It is not his fault. He became very angry about this and asked in a displeased tone, "What did he just say? It is not his fault. Who does he even think he is?" He threw something at him with a strong kick, but he dodged and he loudly said that he should say it again. He looked at him with a calm expression and asked, he himself understands that this guild is black in every sense. It just came to light, that's all. If something they didn't do had spread, it would have been his fault. However, only what they do has spread, and he led to the situation. Suda asked loudly in a very displeased tone, "Their guild, is it a black company? This simply cannot be. He pays them minimum wage and even gets a day off once a month. After all, who selects and gives work to worthless people like them, whom no one else will hire? It's all him." He looked at him calmly and thought that after hearing these phrases worthy of a black company, he would like to conduct a survey to see how many people think this guild is actually decent. He asked in a dissatisfied voice, "The salary is what he calculates for himself. Besides, the number of days off is lower than stipulated by the Dungeon Explorer labor law. He thinks no one notices this?" He became even more irritated by this and said loudly that it doesn't matter. He does government work too. In other words, he is the government. The MC looked at him with a dissatisfied expression and thought that nothing can be done about it. This guild is already rotten to the core. It's completely black. The other employees are also in shock. He thinks they'll quit soon too. He's gotten enough out of him. It's time to lay things on the table. He doesn't want to listen to his irritating voice anymore. He took out his phone and said he was sorry. They'd been together for so long. He pressed the button and showed a hologram in which he was visible. Suda looked at it with a shocked expression and asked, "What does this mean?" Viewers of the broadcast wrote that dark phrases were pouring out. They definitely need to call the police here. This is the dark side of Japan. The conversation is getting heated. He hasn't been to such a wild party of revelations in a long time. How does he feel now? What are his feelings? Viewers continued to message, and he looked at his phone, called it, and asked, "Modern drones are high-tech, right? There's even a cloaking mode." Thanks to this, they were able to broadcast what was happening discreetly. Thanks to the accidental leak, the number of subscribers to the Black Dog Guild channel on the video hosting site increased sharply. Viewers probably gathered immediately. He has to give in, it's time to pay the bills. Viewers wrote, "This morning's show is amazing. He has to keep it up." How is he feeling now? It's so delicious that he ate a bowl of popcorn. He's an internet star. Does his boss know how to say anything other than insults? The message was sent to the labor inspectorate. So, there will be an interesting stream today too? His reaction is just laughable. Makoto looked at his phone and thought that quite a lot of viewers had come to watch. Social media is currently exploding. He called out loudly to him with a serious expression and said that he can't escape now that so many eyes have seen his actions. Or will he, as usual, intimidate and silence everyone? Although, he doubts that even he can silence all the viewers. Suda was very angry, clenched his teeth and loudly insulted him. He calmly looked at him and thought that if it had come to this, he had no trump cards left. He usually uses fear to subjugate people. He's smart enough to understand this, but he lacks the ability to think ahead. He can't have a plan to get out of this situation. He called out loudly to him with a very angry expression on his face and asked what he was up to. How dare he do this? Does he want revenge for exploiting him? The protagonist said he'd be lying if he said it didn't happen. Because of him, he wasted a lot of precious time, but that's in the past. What matters is what happens next. He asked with a serious expression on his face, "What happens next?" He said with a serious expression that from now on he will live for himself. To do this, he first needs to quit this company. What he will do next, he hasn't decided yet, but he will live as a freelancer and find another job. He started laughing loudly and asked, "He's going to become a freelancer and also find another job? What kind of nonsense is he talking about? He's a good-for-nothing, useless piece of trash. As long as he keeps him on a leash, he won't be able to work anywhere else." He waved his hand and said loudly that it concerns them too. MC looked at him and thought that he couldn't believe that he worked under him for so long. He said that he understood his point of view. Then why doesn't he ask if he can get a job somewhere else? Suda turned sharply to him and asked loudly what he just said. He looked at the device and asked if he quit this company, would he find a job? Many viewers started inviting him to their guilds. He looked at the chat on his phone and thought that among them there were famous guilds that were very difficult to get into. He would never have thought that someone needed him. After all, the world is not without good people. He can't. He wants to cry from this. He pointed to the hologram and said that this is the answer. His charm no longer works. No matter what he says, he doesn't care. He became very angry because of this and loudly asked who dragged him, a poor student, into his father's company, who paid for his parents' treatment. He did everything for him, but he dared to do this to his benefactor. Makoto, with a calm expression on his face, said that he had already repaid him. It was he who betrayed him. Honestly, he thought that they would succeed together. Suda walked to the side and all the employees looked at him intently. He opened the drawer, took out a strange sword from there, and in a very angry tone said many times that he should shut up. He pulled the sword out of its sheath and asked with a mad look, "Can he hear him?" The staff were very scared because of this, and he thought, is he serious now? He looked at him with a mad look and loudly called him an ungrateful freak. He looked at this knife and thought, isn't this a cursed weapon used in dungeons? Outside the dungeon, the mere presence of this item violates the law on managing labyrinths. He ran towards him and loudly wished him death. He calmly watched his blow and thought that it was too slow. His movements are much more sophisticated than those of the monsters from Fukuoka. He used to be stronger, but now he has completely sunk. At the last moment, he delivered a very fast blow with his hand and knocked the knife out of his hand. He was very surprised by this, noticed his hand injury, and began to groan in pain. The protagonist went to him, called his name, and said that it was over. Now he too will know what pain is. Coming closer, he delivered a strong blow that sent him flying through many things in the room. He flew across the room and hit his back hard against the wall. He sighed and said that he felt better. He thought that he had held back so he shouldn't die. He hoped that this would teach him something. Suda stood up, called out to him, and said that he would not forgive him. How dare he? He looked at him and thought that even though he was rotten, but a former seeker, he was still strong. It seemed that his spirit had not been broken yet. Apparently, his pride did not allow him to admit defeat. However, if he hit him one more time, he could die. He looked at the other employees and asked loudly, why were they standing there? They should kill this criminal who raised a hand against him. They were completely useless employees. He pointed at one of them and said loudly that he should just stop him. Otherwise, he would cut his salary. MC looked at the employee and thought that if he wasn't mistaken, this guy was a promising young employee hired last year. They had never gone underground together, so his abilities were a mystery to him. Suda said loudly that it would be difficult for him now without a salary. He could make it so that he couldn't work in this industry anymore. He didn't want that, right? The employee, looking very worried, agreed and said that he didn't want that. The employee went to him, apologized, and said that he would simply detain him without causing him pain. Makoto looked at him calmly and said that fine, he could try. He was about to run to him and thanked him. The worker lunged at the protagonist. Makoto wondered if he was planning to knock him down, grab his leg, and put him in a headlock. Indeed, a good way to immobilize an opponent, but the movements were too straightforward, and, as he expected, slow. The worker approaching the protagonist's leg thought, now I've got him. MC leaned forward and struck him from above, sending the opponent's face smashing into the floor and a huge bump appearing on his head from the blow. Suda exhaled angrily. The protagonist helped his opponent up and glanced sideways at the president. Suda shouted with hatred, useless idiot. He won't get away with just a pay cut. MC told the president to give up. This is all being broadcast right now. It's over, for him and for this guild. Suda angrily yelled at him to shut his mouth. The guild has grown to this size thanks to him. He won't let everything be destroyed. After this, the president ordered Goda to capture MC. A large colleague approached the protagonist and stood in front of him. The protagonist thought Goda, unlike that young employee, is an experienced A-rank adventurer. Suda relies on him. Even though this guy is his junior, they've explored dungeons together several times, so he knows his abilities. Unlike last time, this one won't be easy to defeat. The president shouted at Goda to kill MC. Makoto wondered how he would deal with him. Suddenly, the guy leaned over and whispered in his ear, so he was finally leaving. He was congratulating him on this. The protagonist looked at his colleague in surprise. Goda continued, he'd been thinking about this for a long time, that he, Makoto, was too big for such a guild. He should fight in a larger arena. The protagonist thanked him, confused. He hadn't expected such a reaction from Goda. It was strange. When they were exploring the dungeons together, he was silent. MC even thought he disliked him, but apparently that wasn't true. Suda angrily yelled at the guy for wagging his tail at that scum. Goda looked at him so hard that the president's face contorted. The employee told him that Makoto had taught him the basics of being an adventurer. He was his important mentor. Therefore, he couldn't carry out his orders. He added, moreover, that even if he seriously attacked, it would only result in his defeat. He, as the president, understands that, right? Suda was beside himself with rage. The surprised protagonist didn't think like Goda. He was sure they could put up a good fight. The guy told him he would detain the president and he needed to get out of here. MC was surprised. Was he serious? Goda told him that was true and he should trust him. The protagonist patted his colleague on the shoulder gratefully and declared he saved him. The president huffed indignantly. Makoto grabbed the doorknob, thinking finally he'll say goodbye to this guild. At that moment, the door swung open and Amatsuki Kanade rushed in with 2 employees, announcing, Dungeon Association Audit Department. Everyone remain where you are. They've responded to the call. Suda exclaimed joyfully. Audit department. The president turned to the arrivals and shouted at them to grab that criminal Makoto. That guy had raised a hand against him. The protagonist thought in surprise. Dungeon Association Audit Department, the Internal Affairs Department of the Ministry of Monster Control, a government agency in other words. Surely, there had been reports from viewers of the broadcast. With all the fuss, it was hardly surprising. Suda urged the audit department to hurry up and get them to their duties. The Amatsuki staff approached him, handcuffed him, and warned him not to resist. Suda looked at them, at the department head, in shock, and screamed, "What are they doing? The criminal's right there." The girl glared at him, pointed her finger at him, and declared, "He, Suda Akihiro, is under arrest for violating the secret labor law and the special law regarding awakened persons." The president was outraged. What nonsense is this? The protagonist thought, there's no way to justify this. Everything he did was broadcast live, so they must have witnessed everything themselves. Did Suda really think everything would go smoothly? The president struggled to free himself from the department staff's clutches, but it was no use. The protagonist looked at his stunned colleagues and noted, first and foremost, that his previous rudeness toward the staff had not gone unnoticed. Well, now his reign is over. Suda didn't calm down. He shouted that if they were going to arrest him, then they need to arrest this idiot too. He'd used force against him, a law-abiding citizen. Amatsuki took a deep breath to calm herself and replied, "Yes, according to the special law regarding awakened, using their powers outside the dungeons is prohibited without special permission, especially against ordinary people." The president exclaimed hopefully, "Exactly." The protagonist paused. Awakened refers to those who gain special powers after the dungeons appeared. They say awakening occurs when a substance called magical essence, found in the dungeons, enters the body. Everyone's power is different, and whether a person awakens or not depends on their individual characteristics. Once awakened, their powers can be used outside the dungeons. That's why the use of powers by awakened is restricted by special law number 2. Suda, meanwhile, continued shouting, "He's a victim. That ungrateful Makoto needs to be arrested." The girl snapped at him. "Don't let him be mistaken. His actions fall under the category of self-defense. If he weren't awakened, it could be considered excessive self-defense. But in this case, they were both awakened. He, Suda, attacked first and even used a weapon, so his guilt is disproportionately greater." The president exclaimed in bewilderment. "What is she saying?" Goda leaned toward the protagonist and whispered, "Everything will be fine." The protagonist thought, yes, Suda was also a former adventurer. He too is awakened. Therefore, they can't arrest him under the special law regarding awakened people. It's good that the president was awakened. Amatsuki turned to MC and said, "And yet, he also has to go to the police station. Does he understand that?" The protagonist sighed resignedly. He had to go. He looked at the girl more closely and realized that her face seemed familiar. The protagonist asked her if she was Amatsuki. The girl grinned and, embarrassed, answered him. He finally recognized her. MC, with a confused expression, thought maybe they hadn't seen each other in a while, which is why he didn't recognize her. "Well, it's impressive how she's grown." Suda shouted her name in surprise and continued, asking why the head of the first cleansing section is here. She answered that in cases involving awakened intruders, the first cleansing section staff are required to handle such matters. Ordinary people won't be able to catch or detain them if they escape. The president said that was all understandable, but why did such an important person like her come? He hadn't done anything wrong. MC thought about him. No, he had done enough, but it really was strange that Amatsuki had come for someone as insignificant as Suda. The first cleansing section is the ministry's internal department for monster control, an elite division of the Monster Control Bureau. All employees are high-level awakened. They respond to monsters appearing in the city and assist in the arrest of awakened criminals. She, this girl, is the head of the first cleansing department. That is, she is the head of the department. Strong and intelligent, incredibly beautiful, a rising star of the Ministry of Monster Control. And although she is younger than him, she already leads the first cleansing department, a testament to her outstanding abilities. They used to explore dungeons together and got along quite well. On one hand, she is an elite. On the other, he is an office worker. How did the gap between them become so large? It was very sad. The girl answered Suda. There was no deeper meaning to her presence here. She simply had free time. MC wondered, although she must be very busy. Was that true? Perhaps she came to meet someone? The girl looked at him irritably and turned away. He wondered if she really didn't like him. She ordered her aides to take the president away. Suda shouted even louder, "Let them go! He was the guild president. Let them stop this chaos." He then turned to the protagonist and told him not to think he could get away with this. Remember, he would definitely take revenge for this humiliation. The first section staff, dragging the reluctant Suda, threatened him not to resist. Otherwise, they would take action. But he didn't let up. Do they even know how much tax he pays? Their salary is his money. Let him go quickly. Finally, the shouting died down and he was led away. The protagonist thought he had held out until the end. Well, that was the end of his dismissal. He sighed heavily. Amatsuki told him she needed to talk to him. This was a voluntary escort, so he shouldn't be embarrassed. The protagonist approached the window and said, "Maybe later?" He hadn't slept properly in weeks, and he was at his wit's end. The girl called out to him indignantly. He jumped onto the window and thought, twirling the business card in his hands. If it had been an unfamiliar official, he would have gone. But with Amatsuki, you could be cheeky. He promised to talk to her, gave her his contact information, said goodbye, and took off. Amatsuki called out to him. She came specifically to meet him. The MC turned around in surprise. What had she said? He must have imagined it. She was far away from him now. Apparently they would never explore dungeons together again like before. The girl looked at the business card and smiled warmly. After a while, the protagonist, leaning against a brick column, was deep in thought. Adachi called out to him loudly, telling him that he'd seen his broadcast. He'd really gone wild there. The protagonist jumped in surprise and asked his friend not to shout so loudly. What if they were noticed? The guy remarked that he already imagined himself a celebrity. It's hard to be popular. The protagonist told him he was going home. Adachi apologized to him, adding that he was just joking. Sometime later, the friends were sitting in a restaurant. The MC grumbled at his friend. He always said 3 words more than necessary. The guy laughed and said, let him forgive him. It's just that when he's with him, he wants to talk a lot. And as an apology, let him order whatever he wants. It's in honor of his dismissal. The protagonist said, okay, and took the menu. When in the morning a sudden message from Adachi came to go try something, the MC thought, maybe he should go? He was just getting hungry. His friend invited him to celebrate his dismissal. For someone as unemployed as he was, this was even good. A waiter approached them and asked if they were ready to order. The guy told the protagonist not to be shy, so the protagonist ordered a huge cheeseburger, a gigantic portion of fries, a steak, and a double portion of rice. He also ordered a large bowl of curry and a huge amount of pasta, plus drinks and pancakes. The waiter was stunned by the number and size of the dishes, and Adachi also looked at his friend in surprise. Then he asked him if he would burst. The protagonist grinned and reminded his friend that he himself had said he was treating them. Besides, he hadn't eaten properly in a long time. Adachi said, confused, that was too much, even for a restaurant. Was he trying to ruin him? The MC laughed and said, it serves him right. He has a serious wife. Let her punish him for such waste. The guy answered him sheepishly, having forgotten that he was an active adventurer. With such activity, it's no wonder he eats a lot. The protagonist agreed. His friend also noticed that the circles under his eyes had diminished, and he looked a little healthier. He asked him what he'd like to drink. Makoto chose a Coke. He thought Adachi was right. When he was an office slave, his face was like that of a corpse. But when he looked in the mirror today, it looked a little more alive. He wished he could fully regain his living face. Then he reminded his friend that he wanted to discuss something with him. The friend agreed that they could discuss it while they waited for food. He did so between work shifts. He placed a paper tablet in front of the protagonist, on which his name was written, along with the title, The Path to Popular Streamer. Makoto flipped through recommendations on account management methods, how to attract viewers, broadcast conditions, and how to handle comments. There was also information from successful streamers and ways to build self-confidence. The protagonist was incredibly surprised. Adachi remarked, he thinks he knows nothing about streaming? No way. He'd definitely make a world-class streamer out of him. The guy handed him a drone and added, he's also passing this on. It's an outdated model from the ones he used in his previous guild, but it's still perfectly functional. So let him use it for now. The protagonist took it, confused, and said, touched. He even prepared this? Adachi pulled out his phone, asked the MC to wait a bit, and after a short while, showed him the screen, saying, what else is this for? The protagonist saw that his friend had created an account for him. The guy pointed out that he couldn't stream right after creating an account. He created it yesterday, just in case. But it would be better for him to start streaming tomorrow. He'll send him the ID and password later. At that moment, the waiter struggled to bring the ordered dishes. The protagonist sheepishly turned to his friend and said, he really is very talented. Is it normal that he does so much for him? He won't be able to thank him properly. Adachi replied that he hadn't sunk so low as to parasitize on an unemployed person. Besides, he enjoyed watching his success, so he had nothing to worry about. Let him give it his all. The MC said, okay, he'll be grateful. Kumito greedily attacked the food. Adachi told him, by the way, they were talking about him becoming a streamer, but did he have any interest in joining another guild? He'd seen someone offer it to him during the stream. The protagonist replied that while he was considering freelancing, he wanted to test his skills. It turned out he even liked this kind of support in the comments. Suddenly, the protagonist remembered. It was so late. He'd have his friend excuse him. He needed to go to the association administration office to explain. It was time for him to leave, and he thanked him for everything. Adachi replied that he had to go too, but he should say hello to Amatsuki for him. MC thought he and this girl had known each other for a long time. Of course, she and Adachi knew each other too. Incidentally, Suda did too, although Amatsuki had mercilessly delayed him. On the way, Adachi told the protagonist that he hadn't seen Amatsuki on broadcasts in a while, but she had become a real beauty. She had been cute before, but now she was a real bomb. The comments were in a real frenzy. They say she's called the Ice Sword Princess. He laughed when he saw the many comments about wanting to be defeated by her. The protagonist laughed. That's crazy. She really has grown into a worthy person. She must be disappointed to see him now. He thought that it looked like the girl wouldn't be able to attend the upcoming interrogation. Perhaps that was for the best. She hardly wanted to see him fall. Adachi countered, no, that's not true. If she'd been disappointed in him, she wouldn't have come there specifically. They used to be close, calling each other brother and sister. She can't forget him so easily, and she probably has feelings for him. The protagonist exclaimed enthusiastically. Oh well, he was worthless before, but now he'll try to earn her trust again. Adachi looked at him in surprise, then laughingly remarked, oh yeah, Amatsuki has a lot of challenges ahead. The protagonist asked him in confusion. What was he talking about? The guy laughed and replied, oh well, let him forget about it. The MC clutched the backpack containing his friend's work to his chest and exclaimed, whatever, he'll read this and start streaming tomorrow. Adachi replied, he'll watch it while he works. He wished Makoto good luck. The protagonist thanked him heartily. After some time, the protagonist arrived at the location. Blotting his neck and forehead with a napkin, he muttered, it's so hot, but at least now he can go to bed and wake up whenever he wants. How happy he is. He approached the Nishi Shinjuku dungeon and exclaimed, today he'll do his best. As he entered, he told himself that no matter how many times he'd been here, everything was still impressive. In this dungeon, which appeared in a giant crack in the ground, only the middle levels had been explored so far. If he immediately began broadcasting from the deeper levels, people might quickly get bored. Therefore, for now, he planned to limit himself to the middle levels. Adachi's materials said that the power of popularity is great, but a sudden surge in interest can just as quickly fade. He prepared a drone, synced it with his smartphone, linked his account, advertised on social media, and immediately received a notification about a friend's repost and followers' likes. The protagonist was surprised at how quickly everyone should still be at work. The comments energized him. People were writing, the workaholic swordsman was finally with them. They'd been waiting for him. The holy swordsman was in action. What kind of battle would he show them today? Some were ready to subscribe 10 million times from different accounts. Others remarked on his improved complexion. He was surprised. Already 1,000? The protagonist began to get nervous when he realized so many people were watching him through the camera. Come to think of it, it was thanks to them that he was able to quit his job at the company. He had to give it his all if he wanted to repay them with his gratitude. The protagonist tried to contain his nervousness and, looking into the camera, greeted his subscribers. He said that a former employee of the Black Dog Guild was with them and thanked them for coming to his first stream. A ton of comments immediately poured in, saying he was still wearing a business suit, that he was a laborer, a workaholic, and a swordsman for short. They were asking him where they were going today and what he had for breakfast. The protagonist thought the atmosphere on the streaming platform was much calmer, more peaceful, and more cheerful. It was much better and easier than working in a company. From Adachi's perspective, it was also funny. Suddenly, he realized he'd forgotten to turn on the chat projection. He apologized to the viewers and asked them to wait a bit. When he finally figured out the system, he turned it on and told his followers that now he wouldn't have to look at their messages on his smartphone. Thanks to them all for waiting. The protagonist also thanked people for sending him so many messages. Today, at best, he wanted to go down to the middle floor. Next time, maybe he'd go deeper. And yes, he had breakfast today. Thanked them very much for asking. He thought that replying to messages was quite difficult. He only gained more respect for people who did this every day. The protagonist said to the camera that he was already near his destination. Then he would get straight to the point. He would be very grateful if everyone shared his broadcasts on social media, because he was currently unemployed. The MC began the broadcast by saying that today they would go to a cliff dungeon in western Shinjuku. As the name suggests, it is located inside a huge cliff. Therefore, the Dungeon Management Bureau decided to build an elevator that would take them all the way to the entrance. There are many cliffs there, and some people can't even reach the dungeon without breaking something. But when the MC went down, he saw a long line, which surprised him. He was not the first time in this dungeon, but he was new to this. How did this even happen? Was a rare item or monster discovered here? Now he needs to figure out what to do with the stream. He announced to the viewers that he had bad news for them. Today's dungeon entry was cancelled. Some supported him, saying it was no big deal. No one is immune to this, while others were disappointed. One subscriber got angry. He knew he'd deliberately hyped the stream to make money. He'd have to unsubscribe from his channel. The protagonist was upset. This was bad. He needed to do something. If this continued, his entire career would be ruined. He'd studied all the materials Adachi had given him, but he wasn't prepared for this. He needed to do something about it. So, he told the viewers that it looked like something had happened and he needed to ask other people. He thought he'd only recently started talking to strangers, but anyone is usually capable of that. The protagonist approached the guy standing last in line, swallowed nervously, and asked if he could ask him something. The guy turned to him, answered affirmatively, and then exclaimed admiringly, "He's a workaholic swordsman, isn't he?" The entire line turned to them at once, and excited exclamations erupted. "Is this the one? What is this, some kind of joke? He's even cooler in real life." The spectators watched this commotion. The protagonist was incredibly embarrassed. Everyone was looking at him, and his stomach couldn't handle this. Comments immediately poured in. Is he that popular already? Are they inviting him to the guild? He had a lot of fans among the other adventurers. This was quite normal, considering the battle they had just witnessed. No wonder he had become an idol for many adventurers. He asked the guy, "What happened? Why is there such a line?" The man, overjoyed to see him, exclaimed, "He also came to the western cliff. It turns out he was very lucky. They'll be going down together at the same time." The protagonist thought, Western Rock? Was that the abbreviated name of the dungeon? Although that's right, naming it in full would be quite long and tedious. He asked the guy again, what was the reason for such a crowd? The guy apologized, telling him he was just nervous, and continued. The elevator to the dungeon was broken. Several groups had managed to descend in the morning, but it seemed to have broken down somewhere halfway down. In other words, they hadn't even been able to get the stuck people out yet. The MC thanked him for the explanation. He figured the huge line must be because the elevator was broken. He couldn't wait for it to be fixed during the stream. But going to another dungeon wasn't an option either. Viewers would be disappointed. Looking at the screen, he saw they'd already started a discussion. At this rate, the replies would be flying in. Suddenly, he remembered, right? He saw a hint about what to do if he encountered difficulties during the stream. Good thing he saved it to his gallery. The protagonist wasn't particularly thrilled when he found the hint. It told him to do everything just like when he was a corporate slave. He needed to tackle the problem head-on. That was the most fun solution. Meanwhile, in the dungeon reception area, the phone was ringing off the hook. A receptionist named Satomi answered another call and said, yes, there are 18 people inside, and they can't confirm their safety yet. The protagonist approached them, politely addressed the staff, handed over his seeker card, and announced he was going to descend into the dungeon. The worker exclaimed in admiration and confusion, a workaholic swordmaster. She turned to Satomi and told her who had come to see them. Then she told him she'd watched his entire stream. The MC was embarrassed. Even the workers in the dungeons knew about him. It was so unusual. He asked her if she could give him permission. The girl replied that she was apologizing to him, but there was a line right now. The protagonist insisted, it's fine, just let her give him permission. She agreed. The protagonist thought about how to enter the dungeon. He needed to apply and receive permission from the dungeon workers. If a person belonged to a guild, the organization would do this for them. Since he was a loner, he had to do everything himself. Finally, the girl declared everything was ready and handed him the permission. He thanked her and set off towards his goal. When the protagonist approached the edge of the cliff, that was the entrance to the dungeon, he said he needed to heed Adachi's advice and do everything the way he always knew how. Viewers were writing worried messages. If he jumped, he'd die. Someone said they were afraid of heights and would have died just from the sight of it. Was this a farewell stream? This swordsman really is incredibly funny. When the other seekers saw him at the edge of the rift, they wondered what this old man was planning to do. One girl said she thought he was leaving. Another seeker replied, he's clearly going the wrong way. The protagonist, having made up his mind, jumped down to a general gasp of surprise. The audience was also shocked. What had he done? He could die. For a second, the protagonist hesitated. Maybe he shouldn't have jumped after all. But in their line of work, you have to be able to stand firmly on your feet. But the chat seemed to come alive, which was already good. Continuing to carefully descend, he told viewers that those afraid of heights should be careful. The subscribers were going crazy. Was he really going to die from this? How can anyone get used to this? He really won't die. No matter how strong the awakened are, anyone would die from a fall like that. The protagonist seemed to enjoy it. Apparently, it was the right decision. After a short while, he said, they'll slow down soon. With these words, he grabbed the hilt of his sword and gripped it tightly. He slowed down and carefully landed on the floor. His name was engraved on the hilt of the sword. Catching his breath after landing, he said, excellent. So he invites them to begin exploring the dungeon. His viewers, who experienced culture shock from his descent, wrote to him, it's just out of this world. They were dizzy from such a swift and dangerous descent. One subscriber wrote, he thought he was going to die, although he was just watching. The rest admired how cool it was. I wish they could become awakened too. An ordinary awakened certainly couldn't do that, right? If they could do that, there wouldn't be an elevator here. It seems Makoto is one of a kind. The MC told his viewers he hoped he could show them something interesting today. His subscribers immediately responded, he's so polite. The corporate mentality is ingrained in him. There are a whole bunch of rude streamers these days, so they're glad to see someone like him. It immediately calms them down. One viewer was indignant. They'd all suddenly forgotten how high he jumped from. He's clearly insane. They'd already forgotten that. The protagonists, descending even lower, thought, there are exceptions, but most dungeons go underground. There are also ruins inside, and there are also monsters with different characteristics inside. They only live in dungeons. Sometimes they come out. In that case, the Bureau usually gathers people for a raid to get rid of all the monsters. The protagonist said, moving on. Goblins came out to meet him. He knew these monsters usually used knives and other simple weapons, but their intelligence and physical abilities were poor. The Research Association also assigned them rank D, the lowest danger rank. MC said, there are only 5 of them. It's not worth noting. He activated the enhancement, walked through them, destroying them with a single blow. He thought, in any case, he didn't think goblins were interesting to watch. He spoke on camera, then moved on to the middle floor. The audience was confused. What had he just done? They hadn't seen anything at all. One subscriber wrote that he was a B-rank adventurer, but he couldn't see anything. His confidence somehow waned after that. Didn't even have time to film? Even if you review it frame by frame, you still can't see anything. The protagonist thought in surprise. Even though he'd killed the simple goblins, the chat still somehow became animated. Could even this be interesting for people who weren't adventurers? He answered them out loud, glad they liked it. But these were simple goblins, nothing interesting. He was sure they'd like the rest more. The viewers were worried. Where else? He'd destroy the rest of those bastards in one hit. Even his normal battles were out of whack. He'd just ignore the fact that he'd cut down the goblins in one blow. Suddenly, one of his followers warned him. There were monsters behind him. The protagonist did a lightning-fast backflip, ending up behind the enemy, and exclaimed, "What vile bastards!" They were dungeon rats. They were as strong as goblins, but faster. Their blood later poisoned him. He'd had a hard time with that in the past. He read comments about how the viewers also hated rats, saying they were smelly and disgusting. The protagonist noted, as he'd expected, that the viewers shared his opinion. He told them he had a rather effective way to kill rats. Besides, it would eliminate the unpleasant odor. The viewers were curious. What kind of method was it? Let him tell them quickly. It must be something complicated. They need to get ready. Something's about to happen. The monsters realized their enemy was behind them, turned, and charged. The protagonist drew his sword, activated his skill, and slashed through the air. The rats flew off into the distance and were destroyed. The MC said to the camera, "That's it. There won't be any unpleasant odor." This technique is called the flying blade. The shockwave exceeds the speed of sound. Basically, a simple shockwave. He wondered, what was with the comments? Surely a lot of people didn't know about this method, right? He hoped this skill would be useful. He asked the viewers if they understood what he'd done. They were thrilled. It was so unrealistic, but to be expected from him. Ordinary people can't do this. Do office workers have superpowers? It would be cool if they could. Can awakened people even do this? The protagonist was a little disappointed. This wasn't the reaction he expected. Nothing was working. Maybe this wasn't for him after all? At that moment, another message came through, telling him he was doing well, so keep it up. He thought, a little nervously, that he needed to continue. So, he told the viewers that he was heading to the middle floor with them. He added, by the way, that since there was time, he would answer their questions. Let them ask if they were interested in everything. Upon reaching the middle floor, he encountered stronger opponents. The monsters attacked him unexpectedly, but they had no chance of survival. Makoto also dealt with them with one blow at the speed of sound. After that, he informed the viewers that the middle level was next. The monsters there are also dangerous, so you have to be careful. The upper and middle levels are practically identical in appearance. Perhaps the walls and floor are slightly darker. You have to look closely to notice this. How else can you tell the difference? In the amount of magical essence. People can sense magical essence. The deeper the dungeon, the darker it becomes. If you get carried away, you can go too deep and get poisoned. Such cases have happened often in the past. Here, as in mountaineering and diving, you need to descend gradually to give your body time to adjust. That's important. He continued, on the middle level, the magical essence becomes much denser. Therefore, if they want to descend here, they should be more careful, otherwise, they risk never waking up again. The spectators were perplexed, but he fell head first. They hadn't even considered that. What's wrong with him? Perhaps he has complete resistance? He hasn't convinced them, but he frightens them more and more. The protagonist thought, yes, he really did it. Out loud, he answered them. He has resistance to changes in magical essence. For him, even a sudden plunge to the deepest depths would be safe. But if it were an ordinary person, they would simply swell and burst, so they shouldn't repeat his words. The audience perked up. Burst. Magical essence is terrifying. That would be a spectacular death. So he really does have resistance? Where did he get it from? They wanted to know. The MC noted, and everyone was now interested. Looking around, he thought, there were no monsters nearby. Now he could answer them. The protagonist turned on the camera and said, in short, the longer a person is in the dungeon, the more their body adapts to the magical essence. It's the same for him. 350 hours of overtime over 5 years. The protagonist smiled and continued. He'd spent so much time in the dungeon that the local atmosphere was now like home to him. The audience reacted mixed. This was complete nonsense. Many felt sick after hearing his story. He'd spent his whole life here. Their favorite streamer had been toiled away, and it was painful. He'd become a corporation slave and gained immunity. The protagonist thought for a moment. His life had truly been miserable. He never wanted to go back to it. He told the audience that there were also things in the dungeon that, if eaten, could also increase resistance. For example, a glowing fly agaric. He picked one and showed it to the audience. The protagonist explained that this faintly glowing mushroom could only be found in the middle levels. Inside the mushroom was a magical essence. If you eat it, you could slightly increase your resistance to the magical essence. He wished everyone bon appetit and ate the mushroom. The audience reacted strongly again. He'd eaten it raw. Or was it that he was glowing himself now? Who eats anything glowing anyway? Didn't they teach them not to put anything in their mouths in the dungeon? Many people were hospitalized because of this. Even if the mushroom is edible, why eat it raw? The main character said that the mushroom was a little hard, but the taste was quite good. He thought, and this seemed to liven up the chat. He said, but it's better not to eat it right away. If you do, you can get poisoned. In his case, he realized it was edible when he didn't even have time to eat because of work. He simply ate everything he came across in the dungeon. At first, he constantly fainted and suffered pain all over. There were even times when he died, but he had to eat it all, even raw. By the third year, he didn't care what he ate. He was amazed at how easily a person could adapt to any conditions. The audience was amazed. The secret of his power was simply terrifying. Even though he was strong, you shouldn't do that. If you imitate him, you could die. Someone once descended to the lower level and got sick. Someone enthusiastically wrote, "Wow, is there anything really tasty? Maybe you can order food?" One viewer wrote to him, "How sad. Let him buy himself something tasty." The protagonist received a message about a super chat. Sure enough, something about it was written in the materials they gave him. The message said it was a super chat, something like tips. The feature will be unlocked when the number of subscribers exceeds 10,000. However, it cannot be used immediately after exceeding the subscriber count. First, identity verification and personal data verification are required. The more popular he becomes, the more he can earn from this feature. The protagonist thought it was a feature that allows you to send a message directly to the streamer. He didn't think anyone would use it, and reading the message is quite convenient. He needs to thank the subscriber first. The protagonist did this right on camera to the person who sent the super chat. He added that he would definitely eat something tasty, and the fact that the super chat feature became available on his stream is all thanks to them. He bowed and thanked everyone again. The viewers reacted immediately. Finally, they had the opportunity to donate money for his pension. They eagerly await each of his streams. 500 isn't much, but at least it's enough for lunch. Someone transferred him 8,000 and wrote that he's really cool and deserves more. He's found the good side of the internet. Someone sent him 5,000 and asked if that would be enough to eat his fill at a restaurant. The main character himself didn't understand why his eyes stung. These were emotional tears. The MC became embarrassed and, wiping his eyes, told the viewers that something had gotten in his eye. He thought finally his efforts had paid off. For the first time, he had experienced so many people being kind to him. How good it was that he became a streamer. The viewers became worried. Was he okay? Did they make him cry? With age, the flow of tears weakens. Even when he cries, he is very attractive. The main character resolutely thought, no, he must see it through. Wiping away his tears, he said with firm determination, "Thank you all so much. He will live up to their expectations. He will show them the most interesting things. Please let them come to his streams." After these words, he bowed deeply to his subscribers. The viewers were embarrassed. He was being too polite. It was even awkward. Thank him. Let him not work himself to the point of exhaustion anymore, and let him be more careful so as not to get eaten by monsters. They like his streams too much. Let him leave his past behind. Now he can make money from streams. Makoto told them they will move on. If they have questions, then let them ask them. Arriving at the place, MC thought it was somehow quiet today. He wished the monster would show itself. He wanted to satisfy all the viewers, and for that, he needed to defeat someone strong. Suddenly, a female scream came from a hole in the wall. The protagonist wondered in surprise. Was that a female voice? The viewers were worried. What happened? Had something bad happened? But the dungeon should be sealed, right? The news said that several groups entered before the elevator broke down. Why did the image get worse? That's because he's now rushing at the speed of a bullet train. No, even faster. No drone could fly that fast. The viewers were worried. He could crash into the wall. Just don't let him die. They're getting sick again. The protagonist, rushing at the speed of sound toward a female voice, responded to the subscribers, telling them if anyone was feeling motion sick, they should take medicine. The viewers agreed with his suggestion. He thought he wasn't the type to risk everything to save someone, but if he had the chance, he should at least try. Approaching the scene, the protagonist thought something was wrong. All the monsters seemed enraged. He didn't know how to express this feeling, but a tense atmosphere reigned within the dungeon. At a time like this, there was a chance something could go wrong. He needed to be more careful. Suddenly, he saw a girl standing alone against the monsters. He thought in surprise, a lone wolf? One of the monsters tried to attack her, but Hoshino Yui blocked it and shouted at him to go to hell. The protagonist said, perplexed, "It's dangerous to go down alone. She's still very young." The audience noticed. Who would have said that? This was coming from someone who always goes down alone. He's definitely special. He worked for a company. In fact, being a loner at the mid-level and below is like signing a death contract. You need special permission, right? The protagonist thought. In his case, he was simply forced to go down alone. He didn't do it because he enjoyed it. The lower floors are easy, but here it's too dangerous for a solo player. There are many dangers here besides monsters and traps. Without a group, or at least one companion, it's very difficult to move. A dungeon is like a game, but if you die, it's all over. There will be no second chances. Makoto, observing the girl, noted that she moved well, but it wasn't enough. An ogre is a 2-meter-tall demon monster possessing great strength and high intelligence. Overall, it's a very challenging opponent. There were 10 of them, working as a team, against one girl. She couldn't escape. The audience grew worried. Are they ogres? It seems strange. Why were there ogres here? They should be on the deeper floors. This was the middle level, right? Was something abnormal happening here? Makoto understood that this was an abnormal situation. As the name suggests, this was something that didn't usually happen in dungeons on certain levels. These monsters shouldn't be on this floor at all. At that moment, one of the ogres struck Yui with such force that she couldn't parry it, and she was sent flying, falling to the floor. The monster prepared to deliver the finishing blow. There was no more waiting, and the protagonist charged forward. His power surged, causing the ground to rise up, crumbling into tiny pieces. In the blink of an eye, he was at the attacking monster's feet. with such speed that the enemy was barely able to stay on his feet. The protagonist grabbed the girl, saving her, and while escaping, cut the ogre into tiny pieces. When the ogre fell, the protagonist turned around and saw parts of the monster. He wondered if it was an ogre horn. He knew that a defeated monster dropped materials. The remaining parts dissolved into magical essence. The dropped materials could vary depending on the direction of the blow. This way, the most valuable materials could be obtained. The MC looked at the girl and suddenly wondered if he could really hold her like that. He hoped she could forgive him, given the situation, right? The protagonist asked her if she was okay. Yui fearfully replied that she was fine. He asked her again if she could stand. The girl assured him that she could. The protagonist carefully set her on her feet and looked at her carefully. After examining Yui visually, he noted that although she was very tired, she hadn't taken much damage and could walk on her own. He told her his name and asked hers. The girl exclaimed in amazement. He was that same office-bound swordsman? She hadn't expected that at all. Yui told him her name and added that she usually descended into the dungeons alone. At that moment, she reached for her camera. The protagonist thought, who would have thought that a random girl would know him? And even more so, he didn't expect her to call him that. The power of the internet is amazing. His viewers wrote that it was her. She also has a channel. He saw her, the cutest adventurer. They should subscribe to her cute channel. Her stream suddenly stopped. People are discussing it on social media now. Are the dungeon administration not going to take any action? They don't even pull out adventurers. Makoto looked at the device and thought that, as far as he remembered, the administration wouldn't pull anyone out in situations like this. No one would send help here to help those trapped. All responsibility lies with the adventurers. There would be no help from the guild he was in either. He asked how she even ended up in this situation. She said that she didn't know either. She was just streaming here, and then suddenly an ogre appeared. She started crying and said that she could never defeat the ogre, so she tried to escape. However, in the end, she was simply driven into a corner. She thought this was the end. He looked at her and thought that he understood how scary it was. For the first time, he felt the horror and despair firsthand. He patted her on the shoulder and said she did well. Now she could rest, and then it was his turn. He walked towards the monsters and thought that there were 9 ogres here, and that an ordinary girl couldn't handle them. Even monsters from the deep floors were no match for him. He stopped in front of them and asked if they were going to run away. They started growling loudly and ran towards him. The viewers were very surprised by this and wrote that ogres were so scary. He was going to die after all. He should just watch. Their streamer was simply amazing. One of the monsters ran up, but he ran so fast that the monster thought he had disappeared. He delivered one very quick blow with his sword and cut the monster apart. 2 more ogres ran up to him from different sides and simultaneously attacked with their clubs. He easily dodged their attacks, which he considered slow, and plunged his sword into their clubs, preventing them from raising their weapons. The monsters leaned toward him, and he placed his hand on his sword and attacked them both with his feet. With this blow, he was able to break the bones of these monsters. He jumped off the monsters' clubs, caught his sword, and very quickly approached the remaining ogres. He delivered an incredibly fast blow and cut off the heads of these monsters. The viewers were very surprised by this and wrote that he didn't even see the blow. He must continue, although he didn't notice anything. Maybe he will agree to join his guild? He suspects that he doesn't need any guild. He didn't believe it at first, but this is a live broadcast, right? He thought that ogres were incredibly dangerous, and everything worked out so easily for him. This is a rising star. They should see how she looks at him, as if she has fallen in love. Strong men are inevitably attractive. The protagonist said that there is only 1 monster left. He was surprised when he saw this ogre standing in front of him. He looked at his face and thought that he saw his strength. He was afraid, but he was not running away. This monster has the spirit of a true warrior. He sheathed his sword, took a fighting stance and said that they would fight with all their might. The monster let out a loud roar and swung his huge club. He thought that he figured that since he sheathed his sword, he had a chance. But in this stance, he was like a loaded gun that was pointed to his forehead. Now he just needed to pull the trigger and the battle was over. He used his own fencing style, Flash. He ran behind this monster with incredible speed, sheathed his sword and said that he was strong. Flash is so fast that he did not even realize that he was dead. He said with a calm expression that he was just unlucky with his opponent. He thought that this was the fastest technique he knew. The viewers were shocked by this and wrote that it happened again. This time, it seemed to be even faster, so he hadn't really hit before? At least, that's what it looked like. He was just unlucky with his opponent. How cool he said it. So he still has moves? She's already quite old, but looking at him, youth awakens in her. MC dusted himself off, walked up to her and asked if she was okay. He thought, I think her name was Hoshino Yui, right? Maybe she was scared? She seemed stunned, and she also blushed a little. She came to her senses with a shocked look and said loudly that she was okay. She bit her tongue, which is why she said it incomprehensibly. She blushed because of what happened, and he thought that it looked like she was okay. He hoped that she could walk on her own 2 feet. He said that they can't stay here. They were here, in plain sight. Monsters could attack. They needed to move on. She agreed and followed him. He was shocked when he saw what the viewers wrote. A man and a young girl in the same dungeon. What could possibly go wrong? In Japan, because of the dungeons, the gap between rich and poor has become so huge that the rich are allowed polygamy. A harem is no longer just a dream. When was this even possible? Over time, this trend died down, but now it is gaining momentum again. He looked at this with a confused look and wondered what they were even writing. He wouldn't even lay a finger on her. First of all, their age difference is too big. For her, he is probably an old man. Of course, she is probably grateful to him now, but this is far from a feeling of love. After they leave here, they will not see each other again. He pointed to the side and asked if they could take a short break. She agreed, and he said that they were now going to heal their wounds, so he would stop the stream for a while. Then he turned the stream back on. The viewers begged him not to do it. They were even willing to pay for it, but he turned off the stream and thought that if he hadn't turned off the stream, they wouldn't have been able to talk normally. It was necessary. He turned to her and asked if she could sit there. She agreed. Sat down on the rock. Makoto came up to her and said that she could tell him where it hurt. He would heal all her wounds. She loudly agreed, apologized, and said that she was very grateful to him for his help. She really was very grateful to him. If he hadn't come, she would have already died. She would never forget his kindness and would thank him. He asked if everything was okay. It was natural to help your colleagues, right? She loudly refused with a determined expression and said that he didn't need to refuse. Her mother taught her that if someone helped her, she should repay double. He was shocked by what happened and thought that she was too bright for a gloomy man like him. He was once like that too, but now his mind and heart are black as pitch. Hard work changes a person. He hopes that she will never find herself in such a situation. She called him and said one more thing. After all, he has been in this business longer than her and is clearly older. When he addresses her formally, it is a little strange, don't you think? She somehow feels uncomfortable because of it. He thought that they will both be leaving the dungeon, so they really don't need such familiarity. It is a good idea to communicate as comrades. He agreed and said that he will do his best. She bowed, thanked him again, and he asked if she was in pain. Yui started to take off her shoes and said that her foot hurts the most. The ogre touched it when he attacked. He looked at her foot and thought that for sure it was swollen and looked painful. He started looking for something in the inside pocket of his jacket and said that he would cure it now. He opened the bottle, poured it on his hand, and she, with a shocked expression, asked loudly, "Is this a potion? Such a valuable thing." He, with a calm expression, said that he had more. Everything was fine. He began to rub her wound. She asked for forgiveness, and he said that she did not need to apologize. He thought that potions could be made from scrap materials while in the dungeon. It could also be bought for money, but it was expensive. Some guilds might give them out. However, in the guild where he was, naturally, no one gave him potions, so he made the potions himself. He spent quite a lot of time there, so he had no problems finding materials. He was forbidden to bring the materials with him, but if he used it in the dungeon, then there was no problem. He took his hands off her and said that he was finished. She thanked him loudly and said with surprise that it had healed so quickly. He said that she should try to move. She agreed, started moving, jumped up, and said loudly with surprise that her leg didn't hurt at all. He said with a smile that he was very glad about that. He felt embarrassed when he looked at her, turned away, and thought it was good that he turned off the stream. He took out a small vial and asked, by the way, how did she end up in this place alone? Of course, it was not for him to say this, but going to the middle levels alone is very dangerous. The danger level between the upper and middle levels is completely different. Although she shouldn't have met ogres here, there were other monsters that would have cornered her. In short, it's still very dangerous here. If you fight the local monsters face to face, you can win. However, if she fights by their rules, it will be very difficult. However, the local monsters are much smarter and won't just fight her head on. He thought that it would clearly be almost impossible for one fragile girl to survive here. She apologized and said that she was very sorry, but she understood perfectly well that it was very dangerous. However, if she remained on the upper level, the number of viewers would not increase. However, then, for some reason, she was attacked by ogres. The protagonist, with a worried expression, asked why she was worried about the number of viewers. If she died, there would be no point. Besides, she was still very young. She would have time to gain popularity. She shook her head in refusal and said that she came from a single parent and poor family. She needed to earn as much money as possible so that her younger brothers could go to school. While studying at university, she can't earn money in the dungeon, so she has to go at night. She has almost no free time. He was surprised by this and thought that it seemed she had her reasons for it, but now he doesn't even know what to say. He asked if she should join a guild. Streamers might earn more, but if she worked in a guild, she would have a stable salary. She said with a worried expression that these days, it's impossible to get into a good guild without a higher education. However, with a secondary education, the salary is too meager. He understood her and thought that he knew little about the labor market. Apparently, without a higher education, you can only work in questionable companies. The shortcomings of their society are exposed even here. Yui said that if you get a job at questionable companies, you won't be able to get a job at good ones. At least as a streamer, You can work at your own time. MC bowed, apologized, and said that he didn't understand the whole situation. He shouldn't have said all that. She was surprised by this and said that he didn't have to apologize. She was very happy. She didn't think that anyone would save her at all. He seemed so confident. She was very impressed. He stood there like a father you can rely on. He laughed and said in a slightly confused tone that it sounded great, so unexpected. He looks so old, right? She was confused by this and said loudly that she didn't mean to say that. He doesn't look old at all. He's like a dependable older brother or something. He said with a smile that he was just joking. She sighed with relief, and he thought that if you think about it, their situations are very similar. His parents were hospitalized due to magic poisoning. He had to get a questionable job at a middle school. It was the only way to earn money to pay his parents' medical bills. The fact that these days didn't break him was just pure luck. But if he had continued to be a slave to the company, everything would have ended very badly. If a fragile girl had fallen into the same hell, he wants to help her. He took her hand and said that it was terrible. He can't replace her father, but he will protect her until he gets her out of here. She won't be harmed. She can be sure of that. She blushed from excitement, agreed in a very confused voice, and thanked him for it. Makoto looked at her with a puzzled look and wondered what was wrong with her. Why was her face red as a tomato? He took out his phone and thought it was time to resume the stream. He would have to explain the current situation to them. He was shocked when he saw the viewers' messages and wondered, didn't he turn off the broadcast? That can't be. He definitely turned everything off. He noticed that he only turned off the camera, but everyone heard their conversation and loudly said that he was turning it off. He looked very worried and mentally called himself an idiot, wondering how he could have pressed the wrong button. He turned to her, apologized, and said that it seemed like they heard everything, and he was sorry. Yui was a little embarrassed by his reaction, and said that she hadn't really tried to hide it. Moreover, she thought that it would be worse for him. He wondered why she even thought that. He said that he didn't care what they thought about it. He was completely sincere when he said this. She was very surprised by this and blushed, and he thought it was strange. She seemed to freeze again. By the way, Amatsuki had a similar reaction. The next time they met, maybe it was worth asking why she acted like that. Later, she calmed down, gathered her things, called him loudly, and said that she was very grateful for him helping her. The protagonist, with a calm expression, said that there was no need for gratitude. He hadn't done anything wrong. He pressed a button on his phone and said that he was starting the stream. He apologized for having to suddenly interrupt the stream. So, he will now return to their predicament. Right now, they are trying to escape from the dungeon. Viewers wrote that he started as if nothing happened. She will be alone forever. Thank you for not abandoning their viewers. They remember everything. They did not have to resume the broadcast. They have already drawn conclusions. It is quite obvious what young girls and boys are doing. He turned away from the chat with a displeased look, and thought that, as always, they only write vulgar things. So, what's next for them? The fastest way would be to break through the ceiling, but she might not be able to keep up. They will have to walk, although it will take a long time. He turned to her and asked how her legs were. Would she be able to run? She loudly agreed and said that she was completely fine. He said that he understood, then they should go. She agreed, and he thought that she was a warrior, relying on strength, therefore slower than him. He had to take it slow so she wouldn't fall behind. They ran through the dungeon pretty quickly, and he asked if she could keep up with him at that speed. She agreed, and he asked, by the way, had she worked in groups before? Even if you haven't joined a guild, you can still form a group to be safe. Yui, looking a little worried, said that she was often invited to collaborate, but it's mostly guys with scary eyes who call her. He wondered if his eyes weren't scary. Considering how many fans she had, he wasn't surprised that there were some unpleasant people among them. It's quite possible that one of them would want to claim her for themselves. She looks like someone who could be a target for people with ill intentions. Such a sweet and beautiful girl always streams alone, so they targeted her. It's amazing that she hasn't been in danger all this time. He asked, is he her first partner then? She agreed. He apologized and asked, that's not really her first comrade, right? She was surprised and said loudly that this was not true at all. She was very happy that he was her first. She blushed from embarrassment, and the viewers wrote that it was clear he was her first. She was too naive. She needed to be protected. He always dreamed of hearing that he was someone's first. He looked at the chat with a displeased look and thought that such a sweet girl would never fall in love with him. The viewers definitely understood this. She covered her face with her hands, apologized, and was about to say something. He said with a small smile that everything was fine, which amused the viewers. She said with a worried look that, however, that was not what she meant. He noticed something and stopped abruptly, which surprised her very much. She asked loudly in a worried tone, what is it? The MC gestured for her to be quieter and said that he could hear people. They stood in silence for a while, and she quietly said that she did not hear anything. He continued listening, pointed to the side, and said that they were going this way. The viewers wrote that he did not hear anything either. He turned up the volume, but he couldn't hear anything. He thought the drones had powerful microphones. It's just that their office plankton have terrible hearing. He just used the software on his computer to turn the volume up to maximum and still couldn't hear anything. How could he have heard anything? Several groups had come in this morning. Could this be one of them? Was this bad? Was something going on there? He thought he'd heard people's voices, and he could definitely hear the sounds of a struggle. If there were adventurers there who had encountered monsters, he needed to help them. However, he couldn't just abandon her. What should he do? Yui came up to him and said with a serious expression that they had to go. She wouldn't be able to return home if they abandoned anyone. He was about to say something, but she cut him off and said that she would be fine and wouldn't get underfoot. They looked at each other for a few seconds, and he thought that he couldn't refuse when they asked him like that. He agreed and said that, however, if it was dangerous, she should run. She agreed, and he said that then she should follow him. They quickly ran through the dungeon, and he said that they were ahead. She should get ready. A group of people stood in front of monsters in that direction, and Makoto said that this was the second time today. It was time to work. He jumped up to the first monster and killed it with a sharp swing of his sword. The adventurers were very surprised by what happened, and he said with a calm expression that it was troublesome monsters again. He thought they were labyrinth mages, monsters who wear robes to cover their black bodies. They use a staff and attack with magic. These monsters usually don't appear on such floors, but it seems that for some reason they appeared here too. For a swordsman, a mage is a natural enemy. It is difficult for a swordsman to counter someone who attacks from a long distance. Besides, their actions are difficult to predict. It is very important for a swordsman to clearly see the actions of his opponent. Usually, a person's intentions can be predicted by how their body moves, and this is the same with monsters. If he knows their habits, even the slightest movement is enough to predict their actions. However, this is impossible against mages. One swing is enough for them to use completely different magical attacks. Unlike kicks, punches, elbows, and other attacks, he cannot read their movements. Fortunately, over all his time working, he has acquired a whole variety of skills. Among them, there are skills that allow him to sense fluctuations in magical power. Thanks to them, he has an effective way of fighting mages. The mages began to use their magic, and he jumped behind them with incredible speed. They turned to him, and he drew his sword and said that he could kill them before they used magic. He struck incredibly fast, landed, and thought that the labyrinth mages had no body. They were just mist. He said that if you know their weakness, they are not his opponents. For him, mages are even easier opponents. He thought that any of them would die from heavy damage. Viewers wrote that he doesn't even need magic. It seemed to him that the labyrinth mage was a problematic monster. If others could do that, they wouldn't be problematic monsters. At one time, he couldn't do anything to him, so their group had to run away. The protagonist looked to the side, saw Yui attacking another monster, and praised her. He looked at a few other mages, and thought that they had seen the other labyrinth mages being killed, so they were wary. Sooner or later, they would still come. He approached the group of adventurers and said that he had come to help. Could he tell them what had happened? They thanked him, came closer, recognized him, and loudly asked, "Isn't that the office plankton?" It really was him. He was a little surprised by this and thought it was amazing. Everyone already recognized him. He asked what had happened here. One of them apologized and said that he had just gotten so excited. After that, he told them what had happened, and he thought that initially all 5 of them were from 2 different groups of adventurers, but they had to join forces. They encountered unusual opponents for this floor, so they started to run away. However, the labyrinth mages surrounded them, and they couldn't escape. The adventurers were sitting on the ground, and one of them said loudly that if they went on like this, they wouldn't be able to return home. They let these mages surround them. The MC went further and said that he understood everything. He would cut a path for them, and they should retreat. The adventurer was about to object, but he took a small briefcase out of his pocket and said that he shouldn't worry. He couldn't stand these labyrinth mages and had learned to fight them. They were very surprised when they saw it and loudly asked where he got it from. He turned to them and said that it was a special suit. It could store a lot of things in its pockets. The audience was shocked by this and wrote, "Aren't items with pocket space uncommon? Things like this cost a fortune, and it was very convenient." He thought that items with unique effects could be obtained inside the dungeon. He had a couple of such special items. By the way, he didn't tell Suda anything about this, otherwise he would have taken it. The mages returned to them again. One of them began concentrating a fireball in front of himself, and the adventurers were very surprised by this. Makoto watched this calmly and swung his briefcase. He delivered a powerful blow, which reflected the fireball back at the mage and killed the monster. All the adventurers were shocked by what they saw, and he, with a calm expression, said that everything would be fine. The viewers wrote that breaking news, the labyrinth mages lost to an office clerk. The temperature there must have been several thousand degrees. Why was the briefcase undamaged? This is an interesting method. He will take note of this. He doesn't even know what to say here. The remaining monsters let out a loud cry and began to attack with various magic. He reflected all their attacks back and killed those monsters. He looked at another crowd of monsters ahead and said that they should move on. He continued to reflect magical attacks with the briefcase and thought that it was an ultra-strong Aegis business briefcase. It could withstand even the flames of a tyrant dragon. The labyrinth mages couldn't even scratch it. He turned to the adventurers and said that he had cleared the way. He would hold the rest here, and they should go to the exit. They bowed to him, agreed, and loudly said that they were very grateful and would never forget his kindness. He thought that the higher they climbed, the less concentration of magical power in the air, which meant the monsters were weaker. Therefore, once they climbed higher, they would be able to move on their own. He said that now they just needed to prevent the other mages from chasing them. The adventurers encountered a monster and screamed loudly in fear. The protagonist turned to them and also became worried when he saw this monster. Viewers wrote that this was a mage in black robes. Doesn't this monster only appear on the deep floors? Since when do such dangerous enemies appear on the middle floors? What is the Dungeon Management Bureau doing? Even their swordsmen can't deal with him. This is the end. The monster extended its hand toward the frightened girl, and he, with a tense expression, thought that he was using magic much faster than the labyrinth mages. He wouldn't have time to help them. Yui ran towards this monster, swung her sword to attack, and loudly declared that she wouldn't let this happen. The spectators began to praise her, and he looked to the side and saw several other mages heading towards him. He killed these monsters very quickly and ran towards the adventurers. She slashed with her sword, but at the last moment the monster teleported behind her. He, with a very worried expression, loudly called out to her, and the monster used its magic on her. He thought that this was the special magic of the mage in black, spatial magic. It is able to teleport anyone to any place in the dungeon. Quite often, he sends opponents even deeper into the dungeon. Soon she will find herself in the deepest floors, and it is unlikely that she will be able to return from there alive. MC tensed up very much and quickly ran towards this monster. He thought that if he got closer, the monster would simply run away. He would not be able to reach it with a normal attack. However, he wanted to watch how his spell worked from a safe distance. He swung his sword and asked, however, did he seriously think that he could run from him? He remembered the past and thought that when he turned 20, he made a discovery. He struck with a speed that exceeded all possible limits. His attack even created a shockwave that flew further. What if he swung even faster? From that day on, he began to try again and again. At some point, he himself stopped seeing his sword. He even stopped hearing the sound of the wind that it cut through. That's how his sword was able to cut through even space itself. He used his own swordsmanship, a spatial slash, and dealt a very powerful blow. He killed the monster with this attack, sheathed his sword, and Yui called out to him in a frightened voice. The audience was worried about this and wrote, "Why didn't the spell break if the mage was already dead?" Victory doesn't stop magic, unfortunately. Once magic is activated, it can't be stopped. If they don't dodge, there's nothing they can do. They have no choice but to watch it. If only there was someone here who could save her, but there wasn't one. Makoto gritted his teeth from the tension and thought that there was no time. She would soon be transported to the deeper floors. What was the best way out of this situation? He remembered something and thought there was only one thing left. He threw a few bottles to the adventurers and loudly said that they should use this. With this, they would be able to reach the upper floors. From there, they could handle it themselves. One of them loudly asked what he would do. He walked up to her with a calm expression, put his hand on her shoulder and said that he would do so. She was very surprised by this, and with tears in her eyes asked loudly what he was doing. She was about to say something, but he asked in a calm tone, "She remembers the promise, right? Until he gets her out of here, he won't leave her alone." She was touched by these words. The adventurers bowed to him, thanked him for saving them, and said loudly that they would never forget it. He looked at them, after which the spell was activated, and they were teleported. They both found themselves in a dark space, began to fall from a great height, but he landed on one finger. Yui screamed loudly in fear, but he caught her very quickly and asked, "Is she okay? It's quite dark here." He said loudly with a worried look that he didn't do it on purpose. She blushed and said that she understood everything, but he should let her go, otherwise she would feel awkward. They walked on and she asked, "By the way, is it very dark in here because they are very deep?" He said that most likely it was, but first they needed to study the situation. He took a spare drone out of his briefcase and thought that Adachi had prepared this for him in case the last one broke. He said that first they needed to launch this one. The protagonist thought that he had foreseen everything. He would have to thank him again. He activated the flashlight on this drone, which surprised her greatly, but when her eyes adjusted, she said that everything was now visible. He agreed and said that he was also surprised the first time. They began to walk along a long corridor, and he thought that there was a way back and forward, no exit in sight. They didn't even know where to go. More than anything, he didn't like to find himself in such a situation. Yui began to cry, asked for forgiveness, and said that it was because of her that he ended up in this place. She was truly sorry. He thought that although he usually went down into the dungeon alone, so he should have gotten used to this by now. He said that she didn't need to apologize. She got caught in the spell because she wanted to protect the adventurers, right? She should be proud of herself. On the contrary, she continued to cry and said that because of this, however, he was now in danger. He said that of course, they were definitely on the deeper floors. He could feel it in the mana in the air. It's dangerous here, but he's already used to working on the deep floors. He smiled and said that this is his usual workplace. Everything is not as dangerous as it might seem. Thanks to his support, she was able to calm down, wiped away her tears, and said with a smile that he is still a very strange person. For another person, this situation is hopeless, but thanks to him, she is already feeling better. He said that he was glad to hear it. They need to start developing a strategy. She agreed and said that if they get out of here, she will definitely thank him. She has no money, but she will think of something she can do. MC was surprised by this and thought that he was glad to hear that she pulled herself together and was ready to act. But these words would definitely drive the chat crazy. He said that they need to think about how to find a way out. He looked at her face and suddenly put his hand to her forehead. He worriedly said that she obviously had a fever. Yui said that she was fine. He started looking for something in his briefcase and said that this was not good. Most likely, it's magic poisoning. It's dangerous to explore the dungeon in this state. He thought that magic poisoning was an overdose of the magic power that's in the air in every dungeon. If you don't release it from your body, your health will deteriorate. However, if you do nothing at all, you can die. He has high resistance, so it's not scary for him. However, he understands that the concentration of magic power in the air here is noticeably higher. She hadn't been to such floors before, so the local magic power will negatively affect her. This is completely natural and inevitable. He said that, of course, the body can be prepared for this if you gradually increase the degree of magic power. But if you immediately go into a huge amount of magic power, it's better not to risk it and not endure it. She was nervous and said that now, because of her, they will have to hurry. He denied it and said that there is a cure. She calmed down a little, but then was surprised when she realized it. He said that, as a company employee, he spent a lot of time in the depths. Poisoning was common. But then he suddenly realized something and found a way to cure it. She asked loudly in a surprised tone, "What is this strange method?" He pointed to the things he took out of his briefcase and said that this is it. She was about to say something with a worried look, but Makoto picked up a glowing mushroom and said that they need to eat the food that can be found in the dungeon. Today they will cook delicious dishes in the dungeon. He turned on the stream using a spare drone, greeted the viewers, introduced himself, and said that they were continuing the stream from the dungeon in the Nishi-Shinjuku cliff. They are currently somewhere in the depths of this place. Viewers wrote, "He started the stream again? Yui is there too. He is so glad that they are alive. Did he get something mixed up to decide to calmly start the stream like that?" He said that there is a very high concentration of magical power here. She is not used to this and can easily get poisoned by magical power. He pointed at her and said that he thought they could all face a similar situation. The viewers were surprised by this and wrote, "When would they have encountered something like this? Why did he continue to work in such an atmosphere? He has a very sad past." He said that even if they just take a break, it won't improve her health. Before, when he went too deep, he also barely crawled along the ground, thinking he would die. Normal medicine can't cure this, so he will prepare several dishes. First, he needs to prepare a large pot in which he will boil water. This food really helped him fight magic poisoning. Viewers wrote that a cooking show suddenly started. Maybe it's time for him to open his own cooking show? Then let him open a delivery service. He would order something like this. He thought about a magic stove. It converts magic power into heat. When used in a dungeon, it does not require fuel due to the magic power in the air. In addition, the flame does not take up oxygen. It can be used even in a confined space. This is the perfect item for cooking in the dungeon. Yui approached him, called him, and said that she also wanted to help. The protagonist turned to her and asked if she could definitely handle it. She didn't need to force herself. She happily said that if it wasn't difficult, she could handle it. He handed her the ingredient and asked if she could cut it into pieces then. She took it, agreed, but was very scared when she looked at it and loudly asked what it was. He calmly said that it was a plum mushroom. She had never seen one before. She loudly denied it and asked what kind of mushroom it was. The audience was touched by her reaction, and he calmly said that this mushroom is very good at separating magical power into its components. If you eat it in the right amount, it will alleviate the symptoms of magic poisoning. She looked at these mushrooms with a puzzled look and asked if even such ingredients exist. However, how does he know this? Is this information available to most people? He said that he had already said this today. He had neither money nor time for normal food. So he tried a lot of things in the dungeons. When he ate this mushroom, he felt the poisoning start to go away. She said with a dissatisfied look that she would cut it. MC looked at her and wondered if she had any doubts. It doesn't look good, but it tastes pretty good. Or is he the one who's weird here? He took out a screaming carrot and said that many vegetables here also help absorb magic power and also reduce its absorption in general. If she eats this, she will feel better. Yui started laughing, nervously cutting the mushrooms, and thanked him. Viewers wrote that he had never been so scared to see potential hot pot ingredients. This is some new hellish level of hot pot. He cooked with a smile and said that he felt nostalgic. He used to eat this very often. By constantly eating the local food, he increased his tolerance to magical power. Maybe they could use this too. Viewers wrote that it's time for him to admit that he's weird. Who could possibly need this? She approached him and said she was done. He turned to her and said she could throw this in. By the way, he'd even add meat. She threw the mushrooms in the pot and asked, "Did he say meat?" He said the meat of an underground boar, a local monster. It has a lot of meat in it, and if cooked properly, it'll turn out great. Other people have never tried it, but he assures her it's a real delicacy. She started to cry, looking worried, but tried to pretend she was happy about it. He showed the mushroom to the camera and said, "By the way, it's best never to eat this glowing thing. It contains a lot of magical power. Although, if they've already developed an immunity, then there's nothing to worry about. You can eat it." He looked into the pan and said that it seemed to be ready. Viewers wrote that he shouldn't worry. No one would even put it in their mouths. What's wrong with his stomach? It's time to stop judging his actions with common sense. Makoto said he'd add some salt, which could be found in the dungeon. He poured this ominous soup into a bowl and said that a special soup to combat magical power was ready. He handed her the bowl and said that she should try it. Yui looked at this with a very frightened look. Agreed, took the bowl and ate one spoonful of soup with her eyes closed. She swallowed it, was surprised, and said that it was delicious. He looked at her with a smile and said that he was glad to hear it. Viewers were shocked by this, and wrote that if she said so, then it was definitely delicious. She said with a surprised expression that she felt warmth spreading through her body and that she was already feeling better. He said that to feel completely better, she needed to eat at least one serving. Okay? She loudly agreed, and he thought it was his first time cooking for someone else, so he was a little nervous. After some time, she finished eating, bowed, and said loudly that she was grateful to him for the food. The protagonist asked how she was feeling. She said that she felt much better. He said that even her complexion had returned to normal. He would clean everything up now, and she could rest for now. She said that she would help too. He said that there was no need for that. He was quick, so she could just sit there. She bowed, thanked him, and said that she understood everything. She sat to the side, and he thought that magical power was very important for awakened ones. He was worried that the soup could also harm her because her magical power would become too little. However, she seemed to be feeling well. Apparently, she had more magical power than he thought. If she could endure so much, it means she has a high tolerance, although her fighting style is rough. If she trains, she will become a great explorer. He called her and asked who she learned to fight from. She said that she didn't learn from anyone. She had even been in the dungeon with other adventurers only a couple of times. He asked if something happened. Why didn't she work with them more? She said that it was a group where there were both girls and guys. However, with her arrival, the relations in the group became very strained, and then one of the girls said that with her arrival, everything turned upside down. They yelled at her, so she left. He thought that it seemed like she didn't even fully understand what happened. Viewers wrote that such a sweet girl would appeal to any guy. That's why the girls didn't like her. It's good that she left them. He looked at the chat and thought that they understood everything. She is kind, attentive, and caring. Many guys would like a girl like her. However, he is already too old. She could never fall in love with a guy with an empty look like him. However, if he were younger, he clearly thought that she liked him. He would have done something stupid. Now that he is an adult here, so that she does not get hurt anymore, he must warn her. He called her and told her that she should listen. Men are such creatures that they easily fall in love as soon as they are shown kindness. Especially if it is such a sweet girl like her who does it. It is an instant hit to the heart. She was very surprised by his words and asked, "Does he think she's cute?" He looked at her and thought. She blushed again. What is wrong with her? He agreed and said that it was obvious. You have to look hard to find a cuter girl. If they studied with her in the same school, he would definitely fall in love. She imagined how he would confess his love to her. Her nose started bleeding. He became very worried and asked, "Is she okay?" Viewers wrote that she is so cute when she is embarrassed. This office plankton has too much damage. The main thing is that he has low self-esteem, but he is not embarrassed to praise others. At this rate, will they really start dating? They only met today. Yui calmed down and said that she was fine. The MC, with a slightly displeased look, thought that the viewers in the chat were getting excited again, but it seemed like these were all meaningless jokes. She called him in an embarrassed tone and asked, then maybe he would fall in love with her? She was very embarrassed because of what she just said, and the viewers wrote that he was her fan, but would give his blessing. He must show that he is a real man. She is so sweet. What will he answer? He won't refuse, will he? He is an insensitive idiot. He won't understand even such a direct confession. He laughed and said that she was saying such funny things. If someone else was there, he might have misunderstood everything. She apologized with an upset look, and the viewers wrote that he really did it. Why is he so stupid? It was so insensitive. He said with a smile that she should be more careful. He thought that a little more, and his heart would have been stolen by her. She even scares him a little. He said that they need to get back to the topic. She said that no one taught her to fight, right? It's time to fix that. She has talent. It needs to be used. It can't be wasted. She was surprised and asked, does she have talent? He agreed and said that he thought she had much more talent than him. However, her current skills are no good. She needs to train. First, she should try hitting him with a sword. Yui was surprised by this and said loudly that she can't attack him. Makoto said in a calm tone that it was okay. She can trust him. She still agreed took out her sword and said that she trusts him. The viewers were surprised and wrote that he didn't think anything terrible would happen. He didn't think she would even strike him. She warned him that she was going to attack, ran towards him and struck him with her sword. He stopped the blade of her sword with his bare hands with a calm expression, which shocked the viewers and said that there was power in her body. But she couldn't control it yet. She needed to strengthen her core. When she swings the sword, she doesn't put any weight into her strikes. Her body should be an extension of the sword. She began to think about it and said that she understood how she should behave during attacks. She assumed a different fighting stance and asked loudly, "Is it necessary to do it like this?" He agreed and said that the stance had become much better. He thought that in the past he worked part-time as an instructor for awakened ones. However, it was hard to explain something when no one understood him. However, for some reason she understands him completely without words. Has he really become a better teacher? He started giving her vague advice, and she said loudly, surprised, that she felt her blows had become stronger. He said loudly that she should now imagine the force flowing through her spine, not just her arm. The sword equals the body. He again gave unclear advice on leg movements, but she immediately understood it and delivered a powerful blow with the sword. Yui left a deep cut on the wall, turned to him, and with a joyful expression said that it was great. The protagonist said that there were still mistakes and inaccuracies, but this would all be corrected with practice. Soon she would be able to use her full talent. The audience was shocked by this and wrote, "Did it really work?" He didn't understand anything at all. He must take responsibility. He ignored this and said that, besides, her large sword could be used not only as a sword, it could be used as a shield or to redirect enemy blows. She would practice and her defense would also improve. She said with a thoughtful expression that she understood. She didn't even think about using the sword as a shield. He pointed to the side and said that they would move on now. If they sat in such a cramped space for a long time, he would fall into despair. She called him and asked if he didn't mind. He would continue telling her different things. She was also very grateful to him. He turned to her with a smile and said that he was satisfied with her. He wouldn't mind giving her a couple more lessons. She, with a very happy expression on her face, said that she was grateful to him for that. He walked on with a small smile and thought that she was serious about becoming stronger. Viewers wrote that she was too cute. Did he seriously still not understand anything? Apparently, in exchange for his skills, he gave up his feelings. Usually, girls in anime gather around such stupid heroes. He is the main character of the harem. What kind of cliché is this? MC said that they don't know where to go yet, but they will try to go in this direction. The local monsters are much more dangerous, so she should be careful. Yui walked next to him and loudly agreed. After a while, they walked along the dark corridor for quite a while, and he thought that no matter how long they walked, nothing changed around them. They wouldn't make it to the exit like that. They wrote to him in the donation that they were adventurers he had saved. Thanks to him helping them, they were able to get out of the dungeon, and right now, they are sitting in the administration. He was surprised by this, called out loudly to her, and said that the adventurers they helped were able to get out. She was very happy when she heard this and asked loudly, "Is this true?" Hiroki wrote that the administration is currently busy gathering a team to send into the dungeon. They also requested help for them. He thanked them and said that he was very grateful to them, but for now, it was better for them to rest. He thought that he was, of course, grateful, but clearly no one would help them here. They need to get out themselves as soon as possible. She was looking at something with a very worried expression on her face, called out to him, and he agreed and said that they were pieces of the mushrooms they were cooking. There was also a mark from the blow she left here. They returned to where they started. She, with a very worried look, said loudly that it was impossible. After all, they were just walking in a straight line. There weren't even any exits from the road. So why? The viewers wrote, "What's even going on? He's going to go crazy. He doesn't understand anything yet. Is this some kind of loop?" He looked at the chat and thought they were confused. However, if they started panicking now, they definitely wouldn't get out. In the dungeons, those who lose control die. Something unusual is always happening here. Dungeons are chaotic places, but the answer is always there. You just have to look for it. He pointed to the side and said that it was exactly the same trail she left. However, it seemed to have gotten a little smaller. She was surprised by this and said that she hadn't noticed it. He said that he was sure of it. Initially, it was noticeably deeper. He noticed something on the floor and thought that the remains of the mushrooms were too slippery. It was as if it was melting. This was important information. He called her and asked if she felt tired. Yui noticed this and that she began to walk noticeably slower. For some reason, she also started to feel tired. Was it because of her nerves? Makoto thought that it seemed like she was getting tired without even noticing. A wall that was overgrowing itself, melting mushrooms, and loss of strength. There was little information, but he had already found the answer. In fact, everything was extremely obvious. He called her and told her that she should calm down and listen to him. Now they were in the monster's stomach. She was very surprised by this and asked loudly, "So they were eaten? But the wall was stone, wasn't it? Also, why were they walking in circles then?" He said that it was a monster whose body was made of stone. Some similar monsters can move their organs at will. He doesn't change the shape of his insides, so they couldn't escape. The mage teleported them straight to his stomach. They thought it was a cave, but in the meantime, he was taking away their strength. If nothing was done, they would become completely weakened. She was very scared, she was very worried about what she heard and said that this can't be. He took out his sword and said that she shouldn't worry. If it's a monster, he'll just cut a way out for them. She asked in a worried voice, could he really do that? He agreed and said that it was time to get out of here. She loudly agreed and said that she was ready for it. He struck a very strong blow with his sword, leaving a large cut on the wall, and blood flowed from there. Yui was surprised by what she saw, and the protagonist put his hand on her shoulder and said that they really were inside the monster. She should hold on to him tightly. He ran forward, holding her with one hand, and with the other hand he cut the walls in his path with his sword. They got out of the cave and found themselves in a more spacious place. He landed on his feet, put her on the ground, and asked if she was okay. She, looking tired, said that she was going to throw up. He looked away with a calm expression and said that it was him, of course. They both saw a huge monster. She was scared because of it, was about to say something, and he calmly said that it was an S-rank monster, a mountain dragon. He thought it was a huge earth dragon, which could be mistaken for a mountain. Earth dragons have strong legs and sturdy bodies, since they don't have wings and can't fly. On average, they reach 10 to 20 meters in height, and this is noticeably more. This is definitely a walking mountain. He said that he had never seen such big dragons. This is a walking anomaly. All the monsters on the deep floors must have fled to the middle floors because of him. The viewers were very surprised because of this and wrote that this monster is so huge. Can people defeat this monster? It's definitely an anomaly. He said with a calm expression that his body will be stronger than the body of other dragons. It's hard to fight without preparation. Viewers wrote that even their office plankton can't handle it. They have to escape from there. The MC looked at a very scared Yui sitting on the ground and thought that he wasn't fast enough, so they could escape from him. He said that he was grateful that they were worried about them, but if they didn't defeat him, they wouldn't go anywhere. Even the state would have a hard time dealing with such a monster, so there might be casualties. He thought that the state had special units for hunting monsters, but they had a lot of work. They very often had to use the services of black guilds. Their leader often gave him work and even left tips. This was a great way to repay him. He apologized to her and asked if she could wait for him for a bit. Then they would go home. She loudly agreed, and he, with a serious look, began to warm up, thanked her, and said that she should wait here. The monster took a deep breath and attacked him, but he simply dodged it with ease. Viewers were shocked by this and wrote that it was like a living avalanche, a walking disaster. He wouldn't be able to cope and would die now.